There are many statues in the city of Chennai that was Madras. In fact, I feel that there is one statue for every 10 people in this city. And you will notice that in the history of these statues, there is always an episode when they have shifted from one place to the other. Just a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to you about Gandhi's statue being shifted for the metro rail. We have had the Shivaji Ganeshan statue, which was on the beach, which later shifted to Adyar. We've had the Kannagi statue, which vanished and then came back. Practically every statue has got a story of moving from one place to the other. But if there is a record for shifting places, that should go to the Cornwallis statue. Let us look at the history of that memorial. Lord Cornwallis, a British aristocrat, was defeated roundly in the American War of Independence in the 18th century. And then he was transferred to India as the Governor General. When he came here, the biggest challenge that the British were facing was Tipu Sultan. They had fought the first Anglo-Mysore War against him and his father Hyder Ali, and they had been defeated. In the second Anglo-Mysore War, Hyder Ali died of natural circumstances, and the war ended in a stalemate. Thereafter, the British were terrified about Tipu Sultan. Cornwallis decided that he had to teach Tipu Sultan a lesson. Arriving in Calcutta, he immediately came down to Madras, and in 1792, the Third Anglo-Mysore War was begun. Tipu Sultan was defeated, and an enormous war damage was imposed upon him, which he had to pay, and his two sons were taken as hostages by the British till he fulfilled those claims that they had against him. The two boys were housed in Fort St. George and in an enormous bungalow on Mount Road, with Colonel John Doveton taking care of them. Tipu Sultan eventually repaid the debts, and then his two sons went back to Mysore. But the British had learnt a lesson that Tipu was not invincible. He could be defeated. He was human after all. In the meantime, Cornwallis had gone back to Calcutta. He had resigned and gone back to England. The British in Madras decided that a statue had to be made for him for what he had done. They collected subscription, and finally the amount was sent to England with a marble statue to be commissioned of Lord Cornwallis. Eventually, early in the 19th century, the statue arrived. It was the first example of a statue for any person in this city. And the statue was received with pomp and ceremony, taken into Fort St. George, and fixed on a pedestal behind the governor's house, facing what is today known as Parade Square. In order to prevent birds from sitting on it, a canopy was constructed for the statue, and the statue was put inside it. Thereafter, it became the practice for parades to always salute the statue when they passed by. In 1805, Cornwallis came once again to India. He had become the Governor General for a second time. He first landed in Madras, was received with all ceremonial at the beach. Then he went to Fort St. George, where he attended a parade in his honor, saluted his own statue, made a speech, and then went off to Bengal. He did not have long to live. He fell prey to what was known as the Bengal liver, and he died in Ghazipur. It was Cornwallis's motto that where a tree falls, there it should lie. And so he was buried in Ghazipur itself, and an enormous cupola was built over him in memorial, which still stands there. In the meantime, the British in Madras decided that such a great man deserved a much larger memorial, which could be seen by the public, because Fort St. George was after all not open to the public. And so they decided that they would build an enormous memorial for him in a public place, and the statue would be shifted to stand under that memorial. Now, such a monument for a dead person is usually referred to as a cenotaph. And that cenotaph came up at the intersection of Tenampet village and Mount Road. A huge cenotaph was built, and even today there is a road called Cenotaph Road which commemorates where it stood. It became a very popular public spot. The British used to ride their horses around it. They used to take the air around the place in the evenings. It became a spot of public congregation. But the statue never shifted there. the cupola or the cenotaph stood where it was on Cenotaph Road, statue stood where it was inside Fort St. George. And rather incredibly, 100 years passed before some people realized that some action had to be taken. The cenotaph is still standing there, the statue is still here, and then they decided that they would remove the statue. The statue was excavated from its pedestal, uprooted with crowbars and axes, and everything was ready for shifting it to Cenotaph Road. That is when they suddenly realized that the cenotaph was no longer on Cenotaph Road. Sometime in history, in those 100 years, it had shifted to what was called First Line Beach and today is known as Rajaji Salai. Even today, you have a building there called the Singaravelar Maligai. At one time, a beautiful heritage structure called Benting's building used to stand in that place. And the cenotaph had shifted to the front of Benting's building. So they decided that the statue should now stand under the cenotaph in front of Benting's building. And in 1905, the statue finally made its journey to stand under the cenotaph. Within 6 months, they found that the statue had begun to change color. The salt air was attacking the marble. And the question was, what should be done? So it was decided that the statue should now be shifted to the Connemara Public Library. 1 year later, statue made its journey again and it stood in the reading room of the Connemara Public Library. And there it stood till independence. Once independence came, the question arose as to whether Cornwallis really needed a statue for himself in a public place. In 1952, when Rajaji became the Chief Minister of Madras, he decreed that the statue should be brought back to Fort St. George. It did not deserve a place in the public. As it made its journey to Fort St. George, the question arose as to where it should be housed. People said that it could be placed in that old cupola which was in Parade Square, under which it was supposed to be standing originally. But when the statue was brought here, it was found that the cupola was no longer where it was. It had shifted to the eastern front of Fort St. George, that bit of work being done by Lord Erskine, who was the governor of Madras Presidency in the 1930s. Nobody knows why it was done. That meant the statue would be in a public place once again, which Rajaji did not want. By then, a museum had come up in Fort St. George, and it was decided that the statue could be inside the museum. So today, we have a very peculiar situation where statue is inside the museum, cupola is just outside the museum, and there is a distance of hardly 50 to 60 feet separating the two. But between them, they had travelled quite a bit. Cupola from the rear of Fort St. George to the front, statue practically all over the city, and a cenotaph that made the journey from South Madras to North Madras. You can still see Cornwallis's statue if you go inside the museum at Fort St. George. In the pedestal, you will see a frieze depicting Cornwallis taking the two sons of Tipu Sultan as hostage. It's an interesting piece of colonial history. And if it could speak, it would tell you how it made the journey all around Madras. History is full of such fascinating things. Let's look forward to more episodes in the weeks to come. Bye for now.